Welcome to another episode of Rich Dad StockCast, the podcast for people that are serious about improving their financial education. I'm your host, Denney, and today we're busting some of the biggest investing myths that are keeping people broke. Now, if you've ever been told just buy and hold or trust the professionals or diversify everything, this episode is going to be an eye-opener. We're breaking down some of the most dangerous lies that investors believe and showing you what the wealthy really do to grow their money. Now, joining me today is Rich Dad expert Andy Tanner. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, Del. Can't wait to hop in.
Now, before we hop in, I've got a question for you. StockCastBonus.com. There's some amazing resources in there. What exactly do the listeners get by going there?
Well, you know, I've spent my life as an education advocate, at least my adult life, and many people don't know where to begin. And so right now at StockCastBonus.com, we really have a first step type of offer right now. It's free, and we take people through numbers that change their life. You know, Rich Dad Poor Dad really, you could say, is a book on accounting. You could say it's a book on mentorship. You could say a book on a lot of things, but accounting is an important thing, especially personal financial statements. And so I give people 6 very important numbers that absolutely will move the needle in their life. I've done this so long. I know what these are. I know how it works. And so, yeah, we offer that for listeners at no charge. And it's a wonderful adventure, a wonderful process, illuminating. And I can tell you, when a person finishes this little ebook we have, they'll say, wow, I can tell you what the conclusion will be. They'll say, you know what, if I do these steps, my life will begin to improve, my financial, I'll elevate my well-being if I follow through. So thanks for mentioning StockCastBonus.com. It's always fun to offer listeners really important and valuable resources as they pursue that elevation.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, because I want to make sure the listeners get some valuable education, because today we're going to be talking about a lot of lies that people have heard out there.
Oh, lies. Oh, boy.
And I want to debunk them. And I've got some written down here, and I want your thoughts on them here, because there are a lot of people that believe in these lies. Now, the first one you might have heard is just work hard and save. Why is the idea of saving your way to wealth completely outdated?
That's a great lie. I would say the biggest, in 1971, the world changed. After World War II, they had a meeting in Bretton Woods, back east up in New England. And at that Bretton Woods meeting, they said, hey, the United States backs the dollar by gold, or at least a portion of it. That'd be a great way to do commerce, right? And we meaning the United States, the world's reserve currency. Well, President Nixon in 1971 took us off the gold standard to where it changed what a dollar was. I mean, it literally, not figuratively, it literally it no longer represented the same thing, in the future that did in the past. And as a result of the ability, that really enhanced the ability for them to print money as much as they wanted, which would devalue that currency. Well, we've seen inflation since 1971 that is just, frankly, incredible. And so if I'm going to save money and I save $1, I know that the dollar is losing value and my asset column is essentially getting smaller. Even though the number of dollars might remain the same, the essence of what an asset can buy or produce is going down. So it's quite an illusion that people are stacking up dollars thinking they're getting more, but at a minimum, the Fed wants to reduce it by 2% a year. So think about the compounding effect of that over your life. If you were to invest at a negative 2%, like just go to any compounding calculator and put it in, invest at negative 2%, and just watch the exponential disintegration of a dollar. And so in 1971, the crazy thing is you'd have been better off pursuing investment debt, growing the debt side of your balance sheet than growing the savings side of your balance sheet, because you're borrowing something that's going down in value and you're paying that money back with something that is worth less. And if you say that quickly, it's worthless. So yeah, it's a huge problem that, the people that use debt, and private equity and investing and real estate, people that use debt actually have a better advantage if the dollar's going down than the people that save. And so I would say, if you really want to know the answer of why that's a lie, why savings lie, go to 1971 and begin to study how currency works, central banks work, Fed policy works, inflation, devaluation of dollars and currencies. And I think it'd become pretty clear to anyone that saving to try to outpace inflation is, it's not a game I would want to play. Having a little for a rainy day is different. You want to have a little cash. Buffett's got investing on cash on the side, but as a way to make money. I mean, Buffett, I guarantee you, the cash he has, he's not saving it to get wealthy. He's saving it to invest at the right time. He's still in investing mode, and he certainly doesn't want to keep it there a second longer than he'd want to. And he has it in cash equivalents, which are different than saving cash. So
there you go. He's waiting to employ it.
Yeah, one cent question and give you $1,000 answer. So sorry about that.
Yeah, very valuable. How about this one? Investing is too risky. We've heard this before. Why do so many people fear the stock market, and how does that fear hold them back?
Well, risk has a twin. And the on the other side of risk is reward. I mean, there's two sides to every coin, and intelligence exists on the edge, is what Robert Kiyosaki, I've heard him say that, probably hundreds of times in my life, And so if we have a coin, on one side is risk, on the other side is reward. And nothing ventured, nothing gained. Now, when we approach the other myth is that a myth? Investing is risky. Well, that's not a myth. Investing carries risk. The question is probably the bigger myth is that we shouldn't take risk, or that we should take risk, because there's a middle ground. I'll reveal my age. When I was a kid, we'd come home from school. We only had 3 channels, but once in a while there was this series about space called, this is before Star Wars, called Star Trek. And there were 3 main characters in the cast that got most of the dialogue and most of the script. You had Mr. Sulu and Lieutenant Uhura and Chekhov and all these guys. But the ones that really went down and fought the Klingons were Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, and Dr. McCoy. And they all have 3 different approaches to risk. Captain Kirk in the real world, not Hollywood, wouldn't last a day because he'd get killed. He's a risk taker, and he has a belief that he's just going to get lucky a lot and beat the odds, and because we're righteous and we're good and they're evil, we'll win. So he would be a horrible investor in the real world, and he'd get killed immediately. The other one that relates more to your myth that investing is risky and people shy away, that's Dr. McCoy. It's his job on that show to bring risk into the script. He's the one that's going to say, Jim, are you crazy? Do you need a sedative? You can't go down there. Damn it, Jim, are you crazy? This is crazy. But, if you're going down, I'll go with you. Right. So Dr. McCoy is the pessimist. He's the one that is scared. He's the one that doesn't believe. Now, Mr. Spock would be the guy to emulate because he's just logical. He doesn't have a limbic system. He doesn't feel the emotions of fear or greed, either one. He's simply he's a prefrontal cortex. He doesn't register with limbic emotions. And so what he would do with risk is, while McCoy would avoid it, get no rewards, while Kirk would embrace it and just be a gambler, Spock would manage it. He would say, what's our plan B? What's our contingency plan? How should we manage, in Star Trek Wrath of Khan, he's not 2-dimensional thinking like what's his name, 3-dimensional thinking. So he would analyze risk. He would understand risk. He would manage risk rather than just take it or avoid it. So I think the myth, investing's too risky. The reason that's a myth is because it can be managed, and it can be managed effectively with education, with temperament techniques. So it is a myth. It's not a myth that investing is risky. It's a myth that investing is too risky to do, because people manage that risk constantly, every day, all the time. Warren Buffett owns a company called Geico. He gets paid for managing risks. He gets paid for taking premiums and learning how. All insurance is a transfer of risk. If you buy insurance on your car, no longer your risk, but the insurance company's carrying the risk. They get paid for taking those risks? No, they get paid for managing those risks effectively. And they're among the richest. I mean, go to Wall Street, man. Casinos are tiny compared to Wall Street and their insurance companies and banks. And they manage risk. Who am I going to loan money to? And who am I going to insure? They manage risk. So, no, it's not too risky. It's too risky not to invest, and it's too risky not to manage that risk.
I just want to say I appreciate a good Star Trek analogy there. I think all the nerds in us just really came
rough. It's really rough. Yeah, really rough.
The great dynamic between the three personality traits. I never really thought about that. But anyways, back to the myths. There's another one here, and this is a huge one. Diversification will protect you. We've heard diversify, diversify, diversify. Why is spreading your money across multiple assets not always a good thing?
Warren Buffett has a lot to say about this. And the problem with people that study Warren Buffett, what they don't know is he's not addressing the same audience all the time. And if you study him, it becomes very, very clear, crystal, like unmistakable if you study him, that sometimes he's addressing the masses who are uneducated, and sometimes he's addressing the masses that are educated. And I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but if you look at the words that have come out of his mouth, he'll say, look, if you're not going to be educated, like people accuse him, this happens to Robert all the time too. They accuse him of contradicting himself when he's just speaking to different audiences. Happens every day to wealthy people. Well, Buffett said this, and then he said this. Well, look at the contradiction. Kiyosaki said this. Look at this. Look at the contradiction. Baloney. Who am I talking to at that time has a lot to do with what I'll say. I'm going to coach my kids in the third grade different than I coach them as adults in high school, right? Young adults. So Buffett will say in one breath, diversification is an answer to ignorance. And it's evidence that people don't know what they're doing when they diversify. Then in another breath, he'll say, here's, Jack Bogle at my, everyone give a round of applause, him doing the Vanguard index fund that just diversified, and Buff will say, don't try to beat the market. And then he'll say, no, you should absolutely beat the market. So how can he say both? Well, it's always a function of the educated group. And he says to Charlie and I, the late Charlie Munger, he says, it just seems crazy to look at our top 50 investments in order of attractiveness and put as much in number 50 as we would put in number 1. He says that, he uses the word, he says to Charlie and I, that's madness to just put them all together. You would absolutely lean into number 1 and maybe not even look at number 50. In fact, he said that a person doesn't even need 30 stocks to make it. You need one good one like Coke or that he had, and now you're on the map and off you go. So diversification eliminates fundamental analysis. Graham and Dodd, his great mentors, they literally wrote the book on securities analysis in the 30s and 40s. And in that book, it talks about how to analyze stuff so you can pick. So why would Graham and Dodd, other than temperament, of course, but beyond the temperament of investing, why would Graham and Dodd say, hey, learn how to analyze the security if we're just going to buy the whole thing anyway and hope winners outnumber losers? So if you are a uneducated person that doesn't want to be bothered with investing as a life skill, you want to make it a skill for hire, good luck to you. Diversify, and you'll pay fees through the nose to buy, hold, hope, buy ETFs and index funds, and you hope and pay the fees and hope it works out. But if you see investing as a life skill, well, then in that case, Buffett would say, what do you know about business? What's your circle of competence? What does a moat look like? And start working on the personal development of temperament. So diversification is an answer to ignorance. Who's a better guy than Warren Buffett to teach us that? Not me. I'm not going to say I know better.
There we go. I love it. Now, let's do this. Let's go to break. Listeners, Andy just exposed some of the biggest investing myths that keep people broke. But let's talk solutions here when we come back. So when we come back, Andy's going to reveal how smart investors actually grow their wealth, what strategies work best in today's market, and how you can avoid falling into these traps. Stay tuned.
So far, it's been great. I needed a source where I could really enrich my education through stocks. I didn't really have an avenue for it, and it's helped me a lot. The simplicity has really gotten me on the track to where I enjoy the learning as well as it's really solidifying in my mind. And like, they're not just trying to sell you something, they really care about the people that are in the course, and they really do care about you and your personal goals, and what you want to do is to help you and your family and whatever your goals are in life through that. So it's really been great.
Welcome back to Rich Dad StockCast. I'm your host, Denney, and today we're tearing down the biggest investing myths that are keeping people from financial freedom. Now, it's time to talk about what actually works. Before we dive in, don't forget to visit stockcastbonus.com for free tools and resources to help you invest smarter in today's market. Andy, can you dig a little bit further in what else is in stockcastbonus.com?
Yeah, absolutely. People go there now. We just talked about risk and reward, and the only time you take out that, there's two extremes in risk and reward. First is, infinite return, no risk, and the other is risk versus reward. And as you reduce the amount of risk you have to take, in other words, money put out at risk, your risk goes down. So the nice thing about StockCast Bonus is we have free resources that people can go and learn, and I love it. There's an underlying reason a lot of people look the gift horse in the mouse. It's because if I educate someone and all of a sudden they discover that they can really elevate their financial well-being, oh my gosh, now I get to go to work, I get to do something, and I don't get to stay I don't get to complain to the government anymore. I don't get to complain because here it is. 6 numbers will change my life. I have the freedom to move and change these 6 numbers. Imperfect world I'm doing it in for sure, but that freedom remains. So check out stockcastbonus.com. Don't just read it, study it, eat it up, savor it, study it, and learn how those 6 numbers will absolutely take you, your spouse, your family, who you care about. It'll take you to a new level. That I can give you a firm promise, a solid promise for sure.
Now, Andy, what's the biggest shift people need to make when thinking about investing? Investing for cash flow, not just for growth. What's the biggest shift that people need to make mentally when it comes to investing?
I don't think they need to do anything. Do I need to be wealthy? Do I need to invest well? Do I need? I would say you don't need to do anything. Now, if you want to do some things, that means you got a spirit. If people are doing things out of necessity, that can be the mother invention. But I would ask people, what do you want to do? So if people say, what do I need to do? I say, well, you don't need to do anything. You can stay where you are. If you want to do some things, I would say this. There is a gap that just plagues me and you and everybody listening. There's a gap in our lives all the time, never be filled either. It's the gap between what I know now and what I could know to have greater success. It's always a gap. So part of lifelong personal development, the reason you ever quit, is you're trying to chase and shrink that gap every single day. And it's a shame we have commencement exercise where we commence to doing work without becoming who we wanted to become, and still working on becoming a person that knows what that person wants to know. Then you become something knowledgeable. You become knowledgeable, right? You become savvy. You become experienced. It's about becoming. And we talked about that on last episode. So that's the first one. Now there's a second gap that I think people could think about, and that's the gap. And this one frustrates me even more in my life, man. I fight this every day with my gloves on, and I pull them off and keep fighting. Is the gap between what I do know and how I actually behave. It's so funny. I was looking at photos of my life with my kids and my wife, and I'm like, fat Andy, skinny Andy, fat Andy, skinny Andy, fat Andy, skinny. I'm like, man, I look back like, what a battle I've had with that. I know for sure that Ben and Jerry's has 300% of the saturated fat that I need, right? But often my behavior has not been in congruence with what I know. So that has a lot to do with discipline and temperament. I think it was a big part of Robert's success. I don't know, as a Marine, the discipline is unspeakable, and the adherence to codes was just, that's above my pay grade. Those guys are just, I just look up at them like, how do they do it? How do they find the discipline to just simply do what needs to be done when it needs to be done all the time? So I would say that if a person wants to do that, they don't need to do anything. You can be how you are. But if you want to close those gaps, then you engage in personal development and you realize that your success isn't going to be watching all these podcasts and they're entertaining, they're fun, they're for people that are interested. We're glad you enjoy them. A person's success is really going to be when they start to engage in activities that will develop them personally. And this always requires a beautiful discomfort. And what I mean by beautiful discomfort is if you've ever been in the weight room and you've got a coach with you and they're pushing you into 2 or 3 more reps, it can really be miserable, but at the same time, sadistically enjoyable.
Yeah.
There's when I do get on the bandwagon, I'm on the bandwagon. I got all my macros and all this stuff going on. When I do get on the bandwagon, there's actually a weird enjoyment of the resistance that comes to improve. I think where people make the mistake is they think that they can get their resistance free and that they see change as a bad thing. Well, improvement and change are the same word, because if you improved, you changed. So people love improvement, but they hate change. Well, they're the same thing. And so if a person, let's say they've watched, they've read 1,000 books and they've, done 1,000 podcasts, it's time to do something serious. Get in a program of financial development, get mentors. I'll give a plug. People might not like me plugging, but I'll give you an example. Every week I have a mentor club where we have a portfolio, and Noah Davidson, my chief guy, he runs it. And every week they could simply watch us do our stocks, and they see where we win, they see where we lose. We can't come out on a Monday and say pick this, and if it goes down next Monday, ignore it, right? People know if we make a mistake, and so that's there for people. I wouldn't start there. I'd start with our Power 6 at StockCastBonus.com. I'd start there. If you want to do better, than you did today, and you haven't gotten started on that, start on that. And it'll start to dispel those myths that we've talked about, get you out of those myths, get you out of those things where risk becomes, risk, my gosh, man, when I invest and I sell some, some basic, like a covered call, my blood pressure doesn't even, it's just not even, it's like opening the mail. It's like tying your shoes. I don't freak out when it's time to, oh my gosh, I might trip or tie this knot wrong. It's like tying your shoes, like riding a bicycle. It's just not, when I get on a bike ride, maybe I get hit by a train. I don't know, but I'm still going on my bike because I feel pretty safe if I know how to ride it. So all these myths of risk and, diversification and, saving money, all these things, these myths that we've talked about get dispelled when you get the right teacher, the right mentor, and you start doing something different than you did today. But that's not in my control to say what do people need to do. I say, do what you want. Do what you want. We're not here to force any man to heaven. That's for sure.
I love the difference between need and want. Now, if someone wants better discipline, what's one daily or weekly habit that would help them build wealth?
Yeah. Daily, Robert read a book that he shared with me that I really like called The Miracle Morning. And it's just a routine in the morning. It's meditation. It's called Savers. Where you sit in silence, and there's all kinds of different parts. You have a vision, right? Mm-hmm. You have affirmations, all that good stuff. But I'll tell you the one that I think the habit that Robert and Kim, Robert Kiyosaki and Kim Kiyosaki, they shared this with me dozens of times if I watched them speak, is Betty the Bookkeeper. That is a habit that certainly has helped my wife and I. We have a weekly meeting. And ours isn't Betty. Her name's Laurie. But, Betty, the bookkeeper, kept the books, and they showed the accounting. And every week, well, I think Robert and Kim did it monthly. My wife and I, we do it weekly on Sunday, and we say, where are we at? And are we on track? And are we, adding assets or not? Are we acquiring good debt to accelerate wealth or not? Am I going to write these covered calls this week or these puts this, what trades am I going to do? Are we actively moving towards a goal? And I would say above any habit that I learned from Kim Kiyosaki and from Robert Kiyosaki, it would be Betty, the bookkeeper. If you want to really change something, that's a big one you could start with there, man. That would be a big game changer. And so here's what's interesting for people listening. Ask yourself, are 2 weeks from now, will you have had that meeting? 2 weeks from now. And by the way, that is part of what this Power 6 shows you how to do, by the way. If you wanted to have a weekly meeting of accounting and you went through those 6 numbers one by one, change your life completely. I mean, there's not magic in it. There's just math in it, and it works. So check that out.
That's awesome. Now, if someone's listening that has been following bad advice for years, what's the first step that they can do to take today to turn things around? We've talked a lot about the lies, and they've been listening. They've been following this advice. They want to make a change. What's the first steps that they can take today to turn things around?
Well, stop listening to all advice, like all of it. Like, stop. Advice is a horrible way to live. I would stop listening to all advice. What is advice? It's being told what to do. Why do you want to grow up and just be told what to do? Biggest reason you want to get out of your house when you grow up is to get the hell out of there so you're not told what to do. The problem is not bad advice. All advice is bad. All of it is. What do I mean by that? Okay. Andy, and this happens to all of us all the time as teachers. Andy, should I buy gold? What do you think of gold? Well, if I say buy it or don't, what'd you learn? Nothing. Oh, should I buy Bitcoin? Is it at the top now? Is it ready to topple, or is it going to go to 1 million? If I say, oh, it's going to go to 1 million, or if I say, oh, no, it's going to drop, what have you learned? How better are you equipped to invest the next day without my help? And advice, free advice is rough often, and paid advice is really rough, because if you go Wall Street, I will tell you why there's a wealth gap right now. I will tell you why. This is a big investing mistake. There's a reason that BlackRock, Vanguard, all these guys own everything. Because people pay for financial advice, and they take that money and they use it to buy the assets for themselves. And if you run the math on it, it's called the tyranny of compounding costs, unless you become a rebel like Warren Buffett and say, no, I'm not going to take advice. Does Warren Buffett pay fees for advice? Like any advice? Does he pay fees to be told what to buy ever? Does he pay Wall Street? Does he call up Vanguard and says, I simply don't know what to do today, so I need advice? If I need advice, I am making a confession that I don't know what to do. It's the culture of advice that just speaks that I don't know what to do. Whenever I've called up someone to ask for advice, what am I saying? Hey, John, can I have a minute? I need some advice because I really don't know what to do. Advice is a horrible culture. It's why Wall Street's allowed to pay fees for mimicking the market, which how much skill does it take to mimic the market? They don't know any better than you do. And they're so big, they're not agile. And so the idea of advice is, I hate advice because it is antagonistic. It is a headwind to education. It is, what else advice is? Freaking lazy. Like, instead of learning how to do something, well, just tell me what to do. I don't want to learn anything. Just tell me what to do. Look, just tell me what to buy. See the shortcut attempt in that? Well, I don't want to learn about debt and taxes and real estate. Just show me what house to buy. Hey, Robert, I'm looking for the book. Could you just give me the address of the house in Rich Dad Port? Give me the address and the price, and I'll just go buy that. No, that's lazy. That's wanting something for nothing. Advice. My goodness. If people have had bad advice, Well, stop taking advice and learn how to do it. And then you don't need to ask how to do it. Now, that doesn't mean you don't ask for help. And that doesn't mean you don't ask for knowledge. It's the cliche. Give a fish or teach to fish. So you're going to ask for a fish, or you're going to say, hey, you know what? I'd like to learn how to fish. Somebody said, no, I don't want to learn how to fish. Just give me a fish. Just give me one. Tell me what one. Give me a fish. And that's why the newsletters that do stock picks crush. They make zillions of dollars because people will pay for advice where they really should be investing in education and learn how to do something. So, okay, there was the rant, and I always seem to have one come out. But you get me asking, well, I had bad advice. What should I do? Well, stop taking advice. Because when you say, hey, I need some advice, the next sentence is because I don't know what to do. And advice is a horrible thing. And I might get hate from comments on that. I welcome those comments because I think it would underlie the truth of what I'm saying. Sometimes when you're in an argument with something, the best thing you do to win the argument is let them argue. Let them argue. Just let them talk.
That's very true. One last question. What stock should I buy next? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to ask that question.
Oh my gosh, you're awesome. You're awesome, man. That was awesome.
No. But seriously though, if I did have the advice mentality, how do I reframe that?
I think I said it. Stop it. Go learn. Go learn. The biggest myth that we could talk about is the idea that someone can get better without learning something, that someone can get better without personal development. The biggest lie in the freaking 401k is that someone could be wealthy without having to learn anything about wealth, that you could win by being a participant. Notice the word be, by being a participant rather than being an investor. I know of no person ever in the history of this $11 trillion 401k thing that was poor, put their money in a 401k and got rich. The rich got a little bit more rich slower, and everyone else got poor. And it's just not the idea of participation. No. So perhaps the biggest myth of all is that a person can get rich without personal development, especially if they're going from rags to riches. If you're going to go from rags to riches, you'll be someone different. And transformation. Transformation is the evidence of education. Robert has said many times that the evidence of education, if someone is a new person, they can now do things they couldn't do because now they become someone new. So that's my rants. Boy, don't get me going. I'll go all day. I think that's good enough for the listeners.
I think that is good enough for a listen. I love that last quote by Robert Kiyosaki. Well, that wraps up today's episode of Rich Dad StockCast. I hope this episode has opened your eyes to the investing lies that keep so many people from building real wealth. And most importantly, how you can start making smarter financial decisions today. And a huge thank you to Andy Tanner for breaking it all down for us. Remember, financial success isn't about following the herd. It's about thinking critically, taking control, making informed decisions. And for more resources and tools how to invest smarter, head over to stockcastbonus.com right now. If you found value from today's episode, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Thanks for tuning in to Rich Dad StockCast. I'm Denney, and we'll see you on the next episode. Stay smart, stay invested, and take control of your financial future.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.